back to another Purpose Served podcast episode. I'm your host, Darren Wingfield. And as promised, for the very next episode, I have Stacey Lloyd.
AKA Stacey Goldmind.
AKA
Dr. Lloyd.
AKA
Daryl's mom.
AKA
I don't have any more. Author, law enforcement officer, life coach, consultant.
It's a bunch of things.
Accountability partner.
So if you guys are new to the podcast, thank you. Welcome yet again, as I always tell you, for being a part of this journey. If you are new to this podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel, leave a comment, download the podcast on, at this point, we're back on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, anywhere you can find it. Just please download, show your support, show your love. I'm doing it for you guys. And with that being said, my mom just mentioned that she's an author. And what I wanted her on this podcast to come on and talk about is a new book that she's currently working on in regards to emotional intelligence. Now, the very first question that I did want to ask you in regards to that is, what made you start heading in that direction of writing a book on that subject and that matter?
Well, actually, when I was working on my PhD, I didn't know a lot about emotional intelligence. I probably heard about it, but it kind of went over my head. And we took in one of the courses that we had, that entire class was on emotional intelligence. And I'm like, wow, emotions and intelligence. Like, you think it's two totally different things, but you have intelligence quotient and you have emotional intelligence. And learning all about it and being in the field that I'm in, I'm like, wow, if we could understand how we show up emotionally, we can really change as law enforcement officers, as human beings. We can change how we interact with people. So I did my dissertation on law enforcement, emotional intelligence, and leadership. So I wrote that component, and then I was like, you know what? I want to be a subject matter expert in the area of emotional intelligence. So I just began to study and exhaust as much as I could exhaust on the subject, which you never truly can, but exhaust what the human capacity has put out there, human beings have put out there. And I'm like, you know what, I'm going with the state of what's happening with law enforcement in the communities and how people view us and possibly how we view people. I said, you know what, I'm going to write this book called Arrested by Our Minds, A Pathway to Emotional Intelligence for Law Enforcement Officers. So that probably was an extended version.
I mean, that's good, though. We need to hear that. I think that in so many regards, like, you know, I always say on this podcast, broken record alert, you guys know, but that a lot of things need to be elaborated on so people can really, really understand, instead of, you know, shortchanging something because, you know, for example, you might have felt as though that response and answer was long-winded, but it's needed. I feel as though the more detail and information that somebody has, the better, instead of the less. You get what I'm saying?
But you know what, Daryl? I've taken a lot of public speaking courses, and so they're always saying that you should be able to deliver your message in 30 seconds or less. And so
isn't that a part of a elevator pitch?
Right, the elevator pitch. You should be able to tell somebody what you do in 30 seconds or less. And then I'm like, says who? And now it becomes a thing, and now somebody came up with that concept and saying, if you don't do that, then you'll lose people. And I feel like what I introduce, what you introduce, you won't lose the people who are hungry for knowledge. You lose people who got a short attention span. So
you notice for a fact, due to the fact that you personally had your experience with the first book that you wrote, I Can Do It. But I noticed something in regards to even what we just talked about, how people, for the most part, they gather a bunch of information, but they're not using all the information and all the material that they gathered. For the most part, they got to cut a lot of it out and fine tune it to leave out the most important things, because a lot of things is just simply too much. I think about this from an aspect of, like, for example, an author. I think about this in regards to directors and producers of movies. I think about this with artists like rappers and singers. they oftentimes, like for example, when I'm pretty sure like somebody like Quentin Tarantino, if he's putting together a movie, he's not putting in every single scene that he really wants to put in, because how long the movie will really be, and who will be interested in the movie that long.
Right. So when we are introducing information or writing movies or writing songs, we're not writing it based on how we see things. We have to write it based on our targeted audiences mindset and what their desires are more than ours. Because if it was left up to me, my goodness, my book would probably be like 2,000 pages. And so I try to, in this book, I'm trying to put the most important things in there. But as you stated, everything is most important. What I'm not putting in there can be the missing piece to what we need to connect that emotional intelligence piece. But I have to find a way to shorten the book. But and I feel
how do you gather that like knowing what to take out and knowing what to put in based off of what you just said?
So what I do as I'm putting the chapters together, I'm sending it out to a few people to see how they receive it and what they think and how they feel about it, and if it's information overload. And then I'm kind of playing around with it.
Okay, so you're taking like a real live audience and taking their feedback.
Yes.
And using that, for when it's ready to come out, just to test the information that you got in the book to make it not, I wouldn't say applicable, but it's just a response from like a potential, I wouldn't even say customer, but somebody that's going to be reading your book.
Right. So it's not applicable. It's kind of receivable more than applicable. Like, because you know how we communicate, and not to question anybody's intellect, but sometimes what we talk about, it'll go over somebody's head.
Yeah.
And but I wish that as it's going over, they're lifting their head just a little bit higher, just so they can receive it. Don't lower it, lift it up, and now you can receive it. And because I'm reading this and I'm like, wow, all of this information is so important. How do you not lose the message? And Daryl, you and I talk about this all the time. This is the direction that I have to take in this book. Fortunately, unfortunately, is it's very scientific based. Very scientific based. So I found a journalist, Donna Weaver, amazing writer. I said, I'm going to give you the medical piece of how we work. Now what she has to do is interview law enforcement officers who have experienced what I am writing out in the scientific or the medical form.
So it's not objective. I mean, subjective is more objective.
Right. But it's that human component. I need her to be able to interview and write the story. Then people can see themselves in another person and not in the science.
Yeah.
Because sometimes science, they're like, that's too. But now another wow, a human being brought voice. Another human being has experienced this. Not understanding that how we operate is more science than our experience. What we see in our experience.
So it's almost as if, right, you got this thing that's black and white, but at the very, very same time, it does have color to it. So the black and white is the, I would want to say, analytical side to the situation, which is the science, and the numbers, which is the black and white. But the actual color palette is the people, the officers.
I see it the opposite.
Seriously?
I see the color because the colors tell the bigger picture. The black and white makes it kinds of narrow it down to two different categories, and it simplifies it. When you make it black and white, you simplify it. When you add color to it, you make it more complex. You begin to see more. You begin to add more story to it, more content to it. But the black and white is what simplifies it to me.
And that's what I'm saying, right? So that's why I said that what you're putting together is the black and white. But
I'm not simplifying it. The story simplifies it.
The story adds value to it, which means that it's not simple.
I think.
So I was saying that to me, the black and white is the numbers because, like, first off, the black and white is the color no matter what because black and white is a color. But this is also what I was saying. When you dealing with numbers, numbers are what it is. And often you got to find the reason behind those numbers. Those numbers don't necessarily tell a story. They tell it what it is. All right. Due to technical difficulties, we just keep experiencing microphone issues. So I do apologize about that. But what we was just talking about is just pretty much how just talking about the colors and related to numbers and analytics and just creating a picture of information through other people. For example, the whole thing is my mom is doing research through somebody else that's conducting interviews with police officers and people in law enforcement due to match her numbers that she has. And we were just talking about what's black and white and what's actually the color, the numbers or the people that she's interviewing, you know. And she's saying that the people are the black and white and the numbers are the colors. And I'm saying that the numbers are the black and white and the people are the colors. All in all, it's the same exact thing.
They're all colors.
They're all colors.
And the reason why I'm saying that the people are black and white and not to beat a dead horse is because you're introducing a concept to them and you're putting them in a box to only answer the concept within that question. You only want them to talk about that particular area. You're not giving them room to expand, but you're expanding your knowledge. Like me, emotional intelligence, I'm expounding it when I'm talking about optical illusion, when I'm talking about what happens in stress, what happens with the brain, what happens with the history. I'm giving so many other components, but with these particular officers, I only want to hear one particular area. So I narrow down their scope. I don't give them free reign to even tap into everything that I'm tapping into. It's only one area that I need them to communicate about, and that's it. And my question is going to direct them in the area that I am trying to discover answers.
Now, my whole thing on this podcast is relating the previous podcast to the next one. Now, the concept that I have been talking about for extremely, I would want to say for the last like 3 or 4 weeks now, is the concept of functionalism and operating in the means of a parameter. Now, just to break that down for you guys, she's talking about having the research that she's conducting specific fit a specific narrative, you know, and I talk about this all the time, but using something as simple as the alphabet and how that's functionalized for us. To the whole point of me saying this is to understand that even when you set parameters for things, that there's still an unlimited world that you can tap into through those parameters. You see it all the time, and it's in a way where, like I said, you have different alphabets that mean different things, but if you combine those in different ways, you have so many endless possibilities, from putting it down to a piece of paper to the words that I'm saying right now. And you have to arrange them in such an order where it has to go in a certain order. You just can't put any and everything together because it simply won't make no sense. But it is limited, but in an unlimited way, if you guys are getting what I'm trying to say. And that's in regards to sports. It's in regards to education. Like, you know, at one point, there was a time when people didn't believe that somebody could run a 4-minute mile.
Yes.
And somebody went with those parameters, and then after that, they did what they wanted with it, you know. But at the same time, the parameter is still there. Now, the fastest time that this person ran, they're going to say, ain't no time faster than that, you know.
Right. And that's it. It's like limited. You're, and even with my research, I can only work within the confines of the information that's provided to me and try to take it a little bit further. But that marker can only go as far as the information that I already have at my disposal. Because as you always talk about just us being able to tap into the unknown. But we're so used to the known. We've been trained with the educational system. There's just a system of doing things that we've been trained for the known. And it's kind of hard to tap into the unknown. You can take the known a little further where you are tapping a little bit into the unknown. But for the most part, you have to use the known. You feel like you have to use the known for the unknown. So the example that I'm thinking about, not to complicate things, but a tree. So initially, I don't know how long ago, when they looked at the tree, somebody determined that, hey, we could use this for fire, right? Wood, whatever. We could use it. And then somebody else said, man, we could use this for shelter. Then somebody else said, hey, we could use it to build furniture. Then somebody else said, hey, we could use it to make money. Then or paper or books people used it based on something that somebody else was able. They're like, hey, you can form this into something. And they took that form and formed it into something else, but they're just taking that marker and taking it a little bit further. And the same thing is happening in research. Even with me doing the research on this book, I haven't exhausted everything. I could only exhaust the information that I already know, and possibly, I can't say I'm just talking about, I could take it further if I could just tap in a little bit more into that inquisitive side.
So last night, I'm reading a book that I'm telling you guys right now that I'm currently reading is The Hero's Journey, The Hero with 1,000 Faces. And I'm currently at the point in the book where it's in the initiation phase of a hero's journey. Now, when you talk about folklore and mythical stories and even like movies and stuff like that, because they all take from, Joseph Campbell's concept of the 12 steps of a hero's journey. Mm-hmm. But what we was just even talking about, was reading about yesterday with the unknown. So the unknown in a hero's journey, he puts it in the realm of going into the belly of the well, and this is part of the road of trials, and the next act is the initiation. So, for example, if you guys ever seen the Matrix, this is one of those things when Morpheus calls Neo while he's in the office and then starts directing him. So in the hero's journey, they look at this person as, sorry about that, but they look at this person as a mentor, an aide, in regards to this person is about to experience a metamorphosis and a transformation through going into the unknown, and there's going to be a death aspect involved in that. Maybe of the person physical, but of who the person actually is in order to reach a certain point. And going towards the unknown for me is that, a lot of us, when we do get that, that call from Morpheus, it's too good to be true. It's too scary. And the unknown and all the factors of even wrapping your mind around something you have no idea what you're really getting yourself into, most people choose not to do it. Like when you wrote your first book, that was you going into an unknown situation that you've never been in before.
Right.
But people don't often realize how many times that they're always in that situation, but they're choosing to seek what they know and what's comfortable, which relates exactly to my previous podcast with growth versus comfort. When you go towards the unknown, you're embarking on your own hero's journey, and that's what I encourage all y'all to do all the time, because through those unknowns, you make something of yourself in a way where you know how to utilize your resources in your environment to the best of your ability, and it's not the other way around. Because if you don't control that narrative, the environment and the resources will use you.
Well, what I'm thinking about when we talk about tapping into the unknown and resources, when we have resources at our disposal, we know how to use that resource based on how we were trained to use that resource. Yeah. When we are trying to step outside our comfort zone, we're still operating in a zone that we have been comfortable with. So what I mean by that, like you went to Spain versus operating from the same resources and the material that we have. So we're still operating from the known, trying to push the marker a little further, but we're still using the same resources, kind of the same people or things that somebody else used. How do we get out of the using resources or people based on how we have been taught to use it? When we read a self-help book or we read somebody else's story, we are using a resource based on that system. It's always a system of people, a book. How do we go far beyond this system, this structure, this method, this to really, really tap emotional intelligence? I'm writing a book on emotional intelligence. I didn't develop the term emotional intelligence. Everything that I look up is something that somebody else researched. So am I really going beyond this study to introduce something that has never been introduced before on emotional intelligence? I may be trying it or researching it on a new audience, a new group of participants, but I'm still using the template of somebody else's idea. How do I go beyond that? That puts it back to the black and white and not color. It's still black and white. This is what it says it is, and this is how you're going to respond and study it.
This is why we had this conversation last night, based off of what I told you, what my current mind state is right now. And I'm gonna keep it real with you guys as I always do, but currently my mind state has been, can you escape what we've been born into even after death? And I believe you can't. And this is why I believe you can't. Everything fundamentally is made up of the same thing from what the research is, and the theories are of on this earth, outer space, and even on a microscopic level. It's all the smallest things make up the biggest things in this whole entire system. So with what you just said, I really, really don't believe it's really the intention to create something that's too unique, for the realm of what we're doing. Because if you really think about it, even on the biggest grand scheme of things, the previous thing was needed in order for this next thing to maintain and keep it pushing. It can't just deliberately cut off its own, destiny and try to go somewhere else. Because all in all, I really do believe this, and this is why, even purpose served is so important to me, because I start to see the importance of cohesion more than being separate. And separation is not, it seemed like, what this whole thing is looking for.
But what I'm gathering the whole time you were talking, my mind is going as I'm talking, and your mind is going. I'm just thinking that there's a law to everything. We talk about resources, we talk about whatever, but whatever we're using, whatever we're doing, you can't defy the law of that thing. Even when we're trying to discuss human behavior, when we're trying to assist people with understanding how to live on purpose with purpose, and how to be unique and just different, but there's still a law. As you're talking, I'm just thinking about the law.
Yeah. And those kind of things is something that I'm so interested in. Like, something as simple that everybody knows, like something as simple as like the law of attraction, And just to even, I never really talked about that on this podcast, but starting to understand that was the gateway to me to get where I'm at right now. But I realized where most people go wrong with that concept and with that idea, and also how beneficial it actually is. It's not, you shouldn't live by the law of attraction. And I'm going to tell you why. You shouldn't be sitting around saying that I want this thing so bad, I'm about to just believe as hard as I can in it, and then it's going to just come to me one day. That's such a dangerous mindset to live in, because you're wasting so much time. And also, due to you thinking like that, you're not taking the necessary actions, which you should be, in order for you to get this done. Now, I have the 6-step system, which is going to be one of my next uploads. Shout out to Reagan. This is all because of you. God honest truth. But, and the 20-something collective, that's another shout out. But I got this 6-step program, which if anybody applies it, depending on how serious you are about what you're trying to do, it's applicable to be results driven. Now, I talk about this literally all the time. And on the upload, I'm going to just put those 6 steps in such a parameter of how I even made this podcast to show that, you know, if you put things, break it down to what you have to do, instead of just sitting there like, I want to do this, and one day I hope that I'm going to have this $1 million, you know, I'm going to wake up a rap star with all of these fans. It don't work like that. And you need a system in place for you to every day be applying this stuff. The first one, and this is something I talk about since the very first episode of this podcast, you need to set a destination for yourself. And it needs to be extremely unique to who you are. You can't play the game of what people want you to do and how they see your life as. If you got the people in your life that expect you to be a doctor, and you really, really don't want to be a doctor, they gotta live their life just like you gotta live yours. Don't live their life for you. Do what's unique to you, and that's why you're here. You have to do what's unique to you no matter what. That's your calling. It's your well-being. Now, second, once you really thought about this and think about it in the realm of what am I going to be doing, instead of what do I see myself having, what I'm going to be doing for that future destination self, not the house that I want, the car. What do I see myself ideally doing? And then second, determine the resources and tools that you will need to get to that destination, and be realistic about it. Don't be lofty about it. And the whole point is minimizing failure and knowing how to go about this failure. And then the third one that I say is set a timetable to get to this destination with these resources. Number 4, mentally see through it to completion. That's number 4 is important. And number 5, to me, out of all of them, I always say that they're very, very important, but the 5th one is the most important, because you're making sure you're making progress. That's the whole point. You got to get to the results, but getting to the results is the most important thing. Then the results. You create your character, you create your behavior through this, and that's taking action and being consistent to the tools and resources and the destination that you got to go to. And the very, very last step number 6, this ensures that you will not let failure stop you. You go back to step number 2 and determine the tools and resources if you didn't meet it in a timely manner you were supposed to meet it at. Because it's not you it's not the destination that's the problem, it's you.
Wow.
You have to change your approach.
Wow.
And that's why I left that step last for step number 6. Because what most people do when they fail, they think it's them. And they feel as though they're not capable of it. And that's not the case.
That's true.
You just got to switch your approach to the situation, you know? And that all in all, to me, is very important to adaptation, which is so natural and built in us, and also survival, which is another thing that's built in any living thing that you see, is natural. But you got to take those things that's naturally built in us and hone it, because it's a skill you have to develop. Almost everything we do is a skill that we got to develop. You know, that's my long-winded, answer.
It was good stuff. I gotta listen to that several times, even in my own journey. As you talked about it, I'm like, yeah, I think I'm on the right track. But I would like to revisit, write it out, remind myself, just to ensure that I'm on track. So that was good.
Oh, thank you. And for me, it was, and I talk about the unknown so much because it's such a fascination to me. because I don't look at it as a scary thing. I personally look at it as this is where everything is at.
Yeah.
This is where everything I want is at. And I have to go there to go get it, you know? And people don't look at it like that. They look at it as like, I don't want to go there. I'd much rather stay with what I know. But they don't like what they know. They absolutely, we are surrounded by people who don't like what, and they go home to a life that's like unfulfilled from years of doing things that they wanted to do for so long but never ever went out to did it. And I'm 26, and since I understand this right now, I push myself every day, even when I'm tired, to try to figure out something of tapping into that unknown, because that's what's most important to me. And I also realized from being at a place where I didn't have anything, and I was in a comfortable place, and that's the reason why I didn't have anything, you know, that something had to change, and I simply didn't know how. And I also knew I wasn't the only person that was going through this. We all go through this at some given point in our life. But to have stuff out there that if I'm feeling lost, I don't know why I'm here, you know, and this is some serious stuff that people, they think about, but they don't want to tap into because it's scary. It's a part of the unknown. But just like I brought up with this book that I'm reading, the hero's journey, the heroes with 1,000 faces, almost all heroes embark on a journey that they're going into a place that scares them most first. They don't save it for last.
They say if your dreams don't scare you, it's not big enough.
And I really do believe that. God honest truth, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And also, I want to talk to you about how can we deal with certain emotions that we come across. Like, for example, when we're in a stressed mindset, what's actually happening on a fundamental level, and how can we go about, I guess, a solution for dealing with stress?
First thing we have to understand is we have to see if it's a chemical imbalance that's causing the stress, an overactive amygdala, or is it just the fear of life? So you can have stressors coming from, again, a chemical imbalance. For that, the one thing I would challenge people to do, and I've even challenged my doctor, how come you just can't test the chemicals that are in our bodies? Women have testosterone levels. If it's a higher level of testosterone, then you'll have mood swings, like mood disorders, anxiety, things of that nature, anger, depression. Men the same way if they have levels of testosterone. So you'll find yourself being stressed, not realizing that you just may have a chemical imbalance that a doctor should take a look at. But if it's new stress, it's something that you're not used to, and you're like, wow, ask yourself, where is this coming from? The most important thing that you can do in life is ask yourself, why is this happening? And I always say the brain will always give you the answer to the questions you ask. And you probably say this already. Why is this happening? A lot of it has to do with the unknown. And with the unknown and uncertainty causes fear. And with fear, that's another chemical being released. You got stress inhibitors that are released in your body that causes you to have anxiety and things of that nature. But when you start asking, but why? Why am I feeling this right now? And the brain says, well, don't forget you just started something new. Or just don't forget you just lost something. Don't forget that, financially you want to fund this thing, but you try to figure out how it's going to happen. So it's the unknown that causes a lot of stress. And this goes back to your point about the 6 steps. The first thing you want to do is acknowledge, why am I feeling like this? The second thing, what do I want to do with it? What do I want to do with this stress? I never tell people to try to find a way to cut it off. Just try to find a way to not think about it. The most important thing you can do is think about it, because energy is forever moving. You know this. Yeah. Energy is supposed to move. You're not supposed to try to stop energy. You can't stop energy like you can't stop a moving train. You are trying to redirect it. It's still going somewhere, right? So the energy is going. Measure where the energy is going, and write it out. right? The reason why I feel this way is because now what do I want to do with this energy? What do I want to do with the stress level? And guess what, Daryl? As you are going through the stress, because it's the fear of unknown, sometimes you even have to change your diet, right? You have to change how you eat. You want the biggest peace of mind, you want as much energy, you want rest, you want to be able to think comfortably about it, feel comfortably about it. It's so many different areas that we have to do to attack this thing. Once you write it out, you want to say, what's one thing that I can do today to handle this fear and uncertainty that I'm dealing with? The first thing you did was you wrote it out. The second thing that you did was, you know what, I'm going to read 20 minutes on this subject. I'm going to go for a walk and process and vision and dream, and then come back and write your dreams. I think journaling for stress is the most important thing. It allows you to take the intangible and make it tangible, something that you can't see. Now you get a chance to see what you're stressing about. So just write the steps about it. When you are dealing with stress, when you write about it, then it slows the thought process down enough to come up with a solution. But I'm just saying stress can come from two things. It could either be a chemical imbalance or the fear of the unknown. If it's a chemical imbalance, see what your doctor may be able to give you. Just different vitamins to me would do the trick. If it's an overactive amygdala, sometimes it's sleep, sometimes it's working out, sometimes it's what you eat. And secondly, that stress may be coming because of the fear of unknown. Journal.
Shout out. This is another person I want to give a shout out to. This mic is Jesus Lord. Shout out to Grace. Now, every Tuesday, which you guys notice as well, I do the mindful meditation practices with Grace, and this is one thing that for the last couple weeks, well, I want to say over a month now, that she's been helping me understand that with emotions, you can feel multiple emotions at one given time, and her whole thing is embrace them. Yes. For what they are. Don't try to block them out. Yes. Don't try to fight them. Just really, really feel out the emotion, you know. And that has been helping me a lot, to the point where I'm starting to see what's deeply enrooted into these emotions, where they're coming from, what they're stemming from, and to sit down. And also, we do breathing work, you know, for like 25, 30 minutes while she's walking me through these meditations and guiding me through, which is like extremely, extremely helpful, because when you sit there and still your body, start focusing on deep breathing, and then after that you start to see what emotions naturally just come about, you know, and not fight them, but sit there and just like, you know, I'm feeling mad, scared, and happy in a matter of, you know, 10, 15 seconds, and you don't really even realize it. Yes. You know. And also a big thing that I really, really, really enjoy, you know, with the mindful meditation practices, that she has me journaling on different things. So
you're telling me I'm on to something here.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Yes. She has this thing, like, you know, since she knows I play basketball, she calls them conditioning drills, you know, where it's pretty much homework, you know, to do my breathing exercises, and also put down in my journal a specific thing that, you know, that she wants me to like write about, you know, some things that, you know, it just varies and depends. Things that brings me gratitude. What are things that, you know, bring out the feeling of courage? You know, what are some of the things that, you know, that make me feel bad and I'm scared of? These are all things that make up who we are, you know, and it's essential to our survival. But my biggest thing, God honest truth, which I know a lot of people, due to the services and products that they put out, it has a lot to do with heart and mind coherence. You know, the heart and the mind being on the same page, depending on, you know, where you're at. Like, for example, this is such a bad example. Yeah, this is about to be a bad example, but this proves my point. I love McDonald's. I ain't even gonna lie. But if you want McDonald's, you know, you're in a place where if you eat that, it's going to make you feel good. It's going to make you happy. But that was a heart and mind coherence thing because your mind took you there, and you feel good, which is part of your emotions, the heart, and that's heart and mind coherence. But McDonald's is providing that service for you to reach that point, and I'm with this brand that I have, Purpose Served. That's what I'm trying to teach to the individual so they can bring it out in themselves, and it's contagious. It's very, very, very contagious. Once you got one person that's doing it, it's like that person, somebody's gonna look at that person like, what? But like I was saying, it's like glow to them, and it's like, how are you able to do that? I wanna do that. I wanna be around that energy, because it's unique to you. It's not duplicated. It's authentic, and people love authenticity.
Yes.
That's why people like athletes. That's why people like all of these people, because it's authentic. These people are being authentic to them. But we all have that capability. LeBron bleed just like how anybody else bleed, but you just see him in a different light, and then you see your teacher or somebody that you constantly see at Walmart that works there, but you in there so often, you kind of know their schedule. That was weird, but that's just what it is. We got so many commonalities, but we living in a world now where everybody look at everything with such a divide, and that's such a huge issue that I'm seeing right now.
They look at it with such simplicity.
How do you manage that, you personally, with living in this world with so much divide? And
well, Daryl, I'm a part of that. I'm a part of that system. It's things in my life that I know that I made a conscious effort to get a hold of and control, and that's the reason why I have been so successful in some areas. But I'm still trying to master my own emotional intelligence, because we are governed now or controlled by the media, whether it's social media or the internet. We're being controlled through conversation, through what we see, through what we read. I can't even tell you that I have total control over who I am. Even what I do with emotional intelligence was discovered in the class and now discovered online as I look up YouTube videos. So that divide, I'm in a category in itself. Like, I'm all into leadership. I'm all into emotional intelligence. I'm all into purpose. I'm all into Purpose Served. I'm all into what makes people who they are. But that still puts me in a category. That's still a division between people who are all about real estate or all about investing in other things. Like, it's all in some type of category. So I'm divided just like everybody else. I just chose a certain piece of the pie, a certain part of the chart.
Now, with you saying that, I think that it is such a divide that's there, but this is also something that I'll talk about is you need a sense of community, which can cause a divide. You know what I mean? Because a teacher isn't, the person that's serving the lunch, but you need that person to give out the lunch to the students, but you also need, it's a part of the system. And I talk about that all the time with communities and different aspects. Like, you just have, even in different species, everybody has a different job. But all in all, and that's why I say what I said earlier, it all adds into the bigger picture of things because it's needed. And I brought up on a previous podcast I believe the supermarket reference, where you have people that's going to stock the shelves overnight, but you also have people that's at the cash register ringing people up, and you also got people that's prepping the food, that works in a seafood department, and they all are needed for the whole cohesive effort that's needed to produce what they need to produce for the customers that come in there all the time. If everybody was working at the cash register, there wouldn't be
nothing else.
Yeah, you wouldn't have anything on the shelves.
You won't even have a cash register at that point.
Yeah, you probably won't. You probably won't even have a supermarket.
Right, the building will be gone. They just gonna build something else.
Yeah, they're probably gonna
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
it's gonna turn into a GameStop.
Exactly. Amazon warehouse. Because they buy everything. But yeah. So this is interesting stuff, and I just see how we bounce and how we see things.
Yeah, like I'm not even gonna lie. The main reason why I did want you on this podcast is because that aspect of emotional intelligence is so important to who we are as human beings, and that's how I want you guys to start thinking on a fundamental level. Like, we're human beings. Don't overcomplicate that. So that means that you have certain abilities that other creatures wasn't granted. So use that to the best of your abilities through the things that you really, really want to do.
Man, I wish that we could start studying creatures. When you told me about the ants the other day, man,
yeah.
I was just like, wow. So I think what we need to do is start studying them so we can truly understand what we have the ability to do. Just the ability to study other creatures who don't really study us. They kind of feel us instinctively, but we have the ability to study them and learn from them like we have the ability to study each other.
But that's the thing though. These creatures study other animals too.
So that's the part I don't know, right?
They have to.
But that's why I was thinking it's more instinctive, because for survival, where we can pull somebody out of their natural element and like really study and cut them open and look at everything. If they cut us open, that's for dinner.
Yeah, that's for dinner.
Yeah,
it's just like
tightening these bugs.
But it seems like with those systems that they be having in place, they're so in the moment with what they're doing that, like, for us, we think about 5 years later and 5 years before all the time. They're not thinking like that. They're thinking like, I know how this thing move. I low-key know where it's going. I'm about to just stake him out. I'm about to wait for my opening, because
I feel like we do that.
We do.
If you think about networking opportunities, robbery, dating, it's just so many different areas. But I think we sit back and we stake people out.
See, and human nature. Well, not human nature, but our animalistic behaviors is built in us. I guess with our consciousness, now we do stuff like sweep and mop for no reason. I mean, it is for a reason, but a lion ain't sweeping and mopping, and a deer is not going to sweep and mop.
Yeah,
they're just hungry and thirsty.
But that's something in itself. We have the same nature for survival. They have they're searching for what they need for survival, and we're searching for what we need for survival in this animal kingdom.
We're living it in something that's doing that thing too. Earth is doing the same exact thing.
Everything, yep. So it goes back to, wow.
It all connects.
And I want to tell you something. If we go back to emotional intelligence, you being emotionally sound allows you to think creatively and expound on the knowledge that you have. It affords us the opportunity to have this conversation, because when you're in emotional distress, you'll be stuck in the same place. It's like being on a wheel, and you're stressed and you're worried and you are depressed, and it causes your primitive part of your brain, which is the subconscious, to keep talking about the same thing over and over. But right now, you and I are operating at an optimal level of emotional intelligence, where when we're communicating, we're thinking with the frontal lobe, the part that allows us to be conscious. And when we're conscious about what we're talking about, then it taps into the primitive part of the brain, where we can understand it, and then we relate our experiences and the knowledge that we that we have. So when we're talking about emotional intelligence, I'm saying this conversation is at the peak of our emotional state, because right now we're at peace, we're open to learning, we're open to sharing, we're open to purpose. We are just allowing our brain to do what it does. We're using our imaginations. We're creating stories. That's what the highest level of emotional intelligence does.
I agree with you, but at the same time,
But at the same time,
I love saying that. I really do. But I think that when you do reach those places where you are stressed and you are depressed and you are sad, for me personally in my life, I needed that. When I was feeling good about where I was, I necessarily didn't feel all the way good. But it took those places of being at rock bottom for me to understand what I really wanted to do and who I really wanted to be.
well, it does have, it does help us with survival. It does help us with accomplishing things. So you need a level of it. You just don't want it to overtake you all the time. But that's what really, really causes us to operate in survival mode, being stressed. And then the way you respond to it also is a testament to your level of emotional intelligence. When you can be creative about it, where you're not stuck, you have the ability to lead a house, you have the ability to work, that means that you're not stuck in that position, where you have the ability to write out your goals, write out what causes you stress, and write out your goals, even in the midst of you not being where you want to be. When you're able to come up with a solution, then you're controlling your emotional intelligence.
All right, that was pretty good. So I want to ask you, as one of the last questions is, for the people out there, what advice would you give them in regards to serving their purpose?
When it comes to serving your purpose, I just say be. There's something in each and every one of us that we always wanted to do. So I always ask people, if you had all the money in the world and all the time in the world, what would you be doing? Now, for students, they're like, I'll be sleeping, I'll be playing video games. I asked a student last week, he said, I'll just give it all away to everybody. So that's usually it. And I'm like, well, what you have now, the money that you have now, do you give it to anybody? No, I need it. Do you have money left over? Yes. Why don't you give it away? Oh, because I need it. So that may not be realistic, that you'll give it away because you have it. But there's something. And to hear people say, I really don't know, I think it comes from a place of fear. It's a place of, I don't even think it's possible. So because I haven't said it to anybody, there's no way I can say it to you. So I think the way you do it is to write it out. Dream as big as you can. And then just do one thing every day to begin to work on that thing. When you start doing things, you feel better about yourself. And I guarantee you people see you differently. And we talk about the laws of attraction. That's what they call it. You'll find that when you start stepping out on faith and doing something, those things, the resources that you need are, I don't say you're going to find you, you're going to find them, because your mind, your brain is going to say, hey, we need to do this. So you're going to find it. It's the resources are going to be there. I'm not going to say they're going to find you. You're going to find it if you step out on faith and do it. So the one thing I can say, that whatever you feel that you want to be, you have to tell yourself first. You have to believe first. And you know the saying, Daryl, sometimes the only person that's going to believe your dream is you. And you're the only person that should believe it to start. So just do something. Just step out on faith.
That right there was called the...
I don't want to drop this one. He might make me buy it if something happens to it.
Nah, this microphone is already broke. I don't know why I just did that. That didn't make any sense. But
love him.
love you too. But that's literally every podcast in a shape or form. What she just said in a nutshell is the message. Every single podcast, that's literally the message. And what I'm going to be doing from what I have been from here on out is providing more and innovative ways to help you guys in regards to maintaining the purpose, serving the purpose that you're on, and also for those people that don't really necessarily know how to go about it right now, even with the information that I'm providing you. You know, that's the initiative. You know, everybody's here for a reason. You know, you may not know and you may not think that's the case, but you're leaving an impact in some way, shape, or form, no matter what you're doing. If you're here, you might as well leave an impact that you're in control of, but also it's making the world, the society around you, that much of a better place. Now, where can the people find you at?
Right here. No, but you can find me on Instagram, Goldmine Consultants. On Facebook, it's the Goldmine Consultants group, and Stacy Goldmine is the best way to find me. And I always like to say, you are not who you think you are, but you are what you think. So discover your gold mine
And serve your purpose. This is the end of the podcast. I thank you guys for always tuning in, staying in this with me. Like I said in the beginning of the podcast, if you enjoyed this, please like, please subscribe, review. It's going to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, I think Google Podcasts. I'm not sure. I shouldn't even said that. But, you know, I love you guys. Serve your purpose. And, you know, done with another one. Deuces.